you, everybody. Hello, everyone. Happy, what are we on, a Wednesday today? Happy Wednesday. Yeah, I'm going to try and keep this quite punchy, and I don't want to drag on for 2 hours and bore you all to death, so I'm hopefully going to keep it quite interactive and engaging. Please ask questions. It's nothing worse than just talking at people, so if you've got questions, ask them. If you see somebody who you know is doing something well, then obviously share with it. The whole point is there's no gurus in the room. The whole point is that we try and actually share and learn from each other. If you look at what, from when we talk about it from our team perspective, we often say the easiest way to get an answer is to go in a straight line. If you don't know the answer, ask somebody else to do it for you. That's how we work, because somebody will know things or better or an alternative way to do something. So by all means, ask questions, stop me, shout. I assume my screen is playing, the presentation is up at the moment.
Correct.
Ken?
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
good.
Yeah, okay, cool. If it's, I can't see the Q&A while the preso's up, so if you do need to stop me, then please stop me, please ask questions. If I can just ask that you can just mute your mics in the background, just so that I'm not picking up all of your external sound as well.
Mark, I've actually put everyone on mute,
Awesome.
so they're all off. Yeah.
Cool. So I've just put, so there's me, and my email address. Sam's on the call as well. She'll also, just if you need help with anything, you've obviously got Dumasani's details. Sam will also help. If you've got queries or you want copies of something, or you want to connect with somebody, we obviously try and build all our social networks and professional networks. But I am a bit of a social media, I won't say slut, because that would be over the top. But please do go and follow me on social media. There's a starting point. So you can go and connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go and connect with me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, because I don't have lots of friends on Instagram.
I don't know if it's my... Hi, Mark.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I cannot hear a thing from this side.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry for disturbance.
No problem. Can you hear me now?
I think
I can hear
you talk
clearly.
and you cut and cut. I don't know what's the problem. It's buffering.
Ken, you were saying, is it good?
No, we good. I can hear clearly.
Okay, cool.
Do we?
Okay, I'm going to keep going, and then if there's, I'll try and stop and do any catch up if there's specific questions. So just a quick one, who we are. So my background is financial journalism. I was editor of FinWeek for 3 years, and then I ran MoneyWeb for 3 years. So those who know business media in South Africa, MoneyWeb was listed on the JSE for 20 years. Actually, most people don't know that. Listed in 1998 and delisted at the end of, or during the course of 2018. MoneyWeb was one of the biggest media companies in South Africa at the time. It had an online presence of about 450,000 users a month. It had radio assets. It was doing shows on the SAFM, RSG, Mixed FM, so there's some community radio exposure there, did some video stuff. They ultimately bought Classic FM as well. So, my background has always been in the world of media and business media. But when I left MoneyWeb, we kind of launched this consultancy that was aiming at tackling the twin challenges: access to finance and access to markets. So, one of the things you very quickly discover is everybody says they're interested in, everybody says that they want access to finance, almost nobody qualifies for it. So we also talk about this concept of access to markets. So that can be everything from business development strategies, PR, communications, market research, mystery shopping, etc. So that's what we do in a nutshell. I'm just going to jump forward. So who we work with. It's always very cool when you do this slide, because it gets to show you that we actually do get to work with some very cool clients. Outvest there, that's the asset management business for Outsurance, the Youth Employment Service, Quickwill, the guys from SME.TAX, Bridgement, Advancement, there's the Snapshot guys, Uzenzele. So we do all sorts of things for these clients, and I've actually added a few more since the slide deck got done. But it is quite nice to be able to demonstrate that you can actually have a credible client base to go and work with. So if you've got questions about how these guys do their social and some of the things that they're doing, obviously you can ask, but this is just a bit of background as to who we are and what we do. So we have two rules in terms of social media. Number one, social media is not marketing. And the second one is business development leads marketing. And I think that when we look at this, often people look at their social media, and Ken, Tyron, we discuss this quite a lot, is so many entrepreneurs go and they say, well, I'm posting to LinkedIn, I'm posting to Facebook, I'm on Twitter the whole time, I must be doing marketing. And actually the reality is that a lot of the stuff that they're doing is procrastinating. It's fun to go and sit on social media and go and come up with your fancy Instagram post or your deep thoughts on Twitter and try and generate some engagement on to go and debate what's happening with the COVID-19 virus or what is happening with government, etc. But that's not really marketing, and too many people we find spend too much time actually just stuffing around on social media because they don't want to do the hard yards in terms of business development, going and talking to clients, going and engaging with people. And so, we have this concept which says business development leads marketing. Small businesses don't need branding, they don't need business cards, they don't need bean bags, they don't need fancy offices. What they need is clients. And so we kind of work with this idea, try and find out how you can get a client, and then how to kind of repeat that formula as you go along. So when we found a formula that works, doesn't mean that we go and invest a whole lot in a fancy brand guide. We go and say, let's go and actually talk about specifically working toward a specific channel. So, and I'll use the Youth Employment Service as a very good example. So YES is actually an incentive that comes out of the Department of Trade and Industry. It rewards organizations with a BEE level up on their scorecard. Got some very fancy branding and marketing that happens, but it's almost half of its business comes straight out of the BE consulting agencies. So, the marketing thing is work out where your business is coming from and then go and target it toward them. You'll find, instead of trying to engage 50,000 people, I think in fact, if you look, their LinkedIn following, for instance, is about 30,000 followers, but only a handful of those represent the BE agencies who are the corporates. And in the YES case, they often have to sit there and service a whole lot of youth looking for employment, but that's actually not their client base. So that's why we kind of work with this thing that says business development leads marketing, and we work on that. And I'll show you a very interesting graph here, which just talks a little bit about the kind of sheer scale of social media in the world. So they do this report once a year, and it's basically the state of data. And this is the 2019 state of data, and I'll just find some examples here. Every minute there's 4.49 million Google searches that are done every minute. 1.4 million swipes on Tinder. Uber users take 9,000 rides a minute. What else we got? 55,000 Instagram posts. 888 million emails are sent every minute. I mean, it's quite phenomenal if you go and look at it. There's a lot of noise out there. So, 277,000 Instagram stories. I still haven't totally worked that one out. But I mean, there's just so much data out there, so much noise. Everybody's competing for your kind of social media space. And, we're all trying to be more outrageous, more visible, and yet we can't get out there and actually take ownership of your business space and your marketing space. So, what I thought was quite cool, I don't know if anyone remember these guys, Lakshan Culture. So Lakshan's actually a really interesting story. So they did a lot of, it was a township fashion brand. Sorry, somebody's somebody's not on mute there, Ty. Thanks. And they did a lot of township, it was a township fashion brand. And they went and they couldn't afford full-time marketing. So what they did was they actually looked for this, they actually were some of the original influencers that were out there. So they would go and say, please, will you go and wear our brand and go and endorse us, going like that, and go in partnership with them. And, I've always found them a very good example to be able to go and work with because it's the typical entrepreneurship story. You don't have a lot of money for branding. You don't have a lot of money for spending on Google ads and Facebook ads and all of that. So, if you go and read up on the story, it really does talk to a kind of startup brand that was going and aligning themselves with influential people inside the industry who were able to go and endorse their product and get it out there and share it with the community. So, if you want to go and look and read up on the story, something like Loction Culture is a very good one to go and focus on. What do we got? We got Twitter. So I'm going to get into the actual specific channels now and some of the things that work and some of the things that don't work. But maybe I'm going to stop for a moment and kind of, are there any kind of standard questions that you guys have got out there that you're kind of interested in getting some answers in? I mean, I don't want to talk at you the whole time, but I mean, you've got specific questions you'd like answered? Nothing? Cool. Okay.
Mark, I've got a question.
Yeah.
It's probably a bit early in the session, but
It's never too early.
the importance, I mean, how important is being on social media in terms of owning a business? How would you rate it in terms of importance?
So, I mean, my thing will always be sales will trump, and that was kind of what we started out with. Sales will always trump kind of your brand awareness. Often you get these consultants will come in and they'll tell you that you need to have a Twitter account, you need to have a Facebook account, you need to have an Insta account. If that's bringing you business, then awesome. But, get out there and do it and repeat it the whole time. But if it's just consuming time, and I think there, we see it all the time, is guys just want to be on social media because it's the simplest form. There's very low barriers to entry to get involved with social media. So, you have to kind of, I can't, every business is going to be different. The importance of it will be completely different between if you are net florist versus if you are, selling a drone solution. So, I know Andela's got the drone house solution stuff. The chances that you're going to sell a drone over social media is very different to selling a bouquet of flowers on Harold's relationship hotline on Netforest. So I think that you have to kind of look at it from a business perspective and say what works for me and what doesn't. I mean, there are also things that that specifically leave themselves very relatable to social media. So I mean, we've got a kind of med tech business which looks at a lot of sort of health and fitness, ergonomics in the workplace. It's very easy to go and demonstrate what that is like and how that works. But I mean, if you go and think about SME.TAX, it's far harder to go and share that over social media because it's a less visual thing. It's not something that people can go and look at and say, great, I want to find out about my accounts and my taxes because I'm going to go and look and take that advice on Twitter. So I think, each business is going to be different and there's going to be different elements of social media that will apply and be applicable to those particular businesses. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Mark. So essentially, each business should actually cut their own niche in terms of what they want to push out over social media.
Yeah, exactly. And what I've kind of broken down here is once we start going through the different channels, you can actually see what's working and what's not working for you. And because I think this is something, it's often a very brutal report when you start looking at you say, well, I've tweeted 20 times today and it's actually produced absolutely no business for me. It's had no engagement. Nobody's actually looking at it. Whereas if you can find stuff that has been working, then you can obviously get out there and go and repeat it the whole time.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got a question, Mark. So, is it not also it's very important, in my opinion, to do that initial customer validation in the beginning, to actually know where your people that you are servicing, where their eyes are at. It might be a newspaper, or it might be in some places that you never expected. But I think the first form of experimentation should be there.
So, I mean, I think, I've got a very good, when I was working at Media 24, Chris Becker and I actually had a shouting match once. He effectively had an idea that the readership of Finweek had to be young, black, aspirational, and he was doing this whole exercise with all the magazines where they would put a mannequin up in the office and say, this is your kind of target reader, and they would say you would find that person who would typically be reading the Sowetan magazine, the Sowetan newspaper. So that's where you need to go and advertise to be able to go and access that type of reader. Or they would be sitting listening to Metro FM, and I think it tends to sometimes pigeonhole a lot of the, where you think your audience is. MoneyWeb is another very good example. Often people would think that, you're going to get a lot of investors who read MoneyWeb. And yet, if you go and look at that audience on the MoneyWeb website, you'll never see a stockbroker advertising on MoneyWeb. Because stockbrokers don't believe that they access their, fund clients. That you might see business banking, for instance, advertising quite a lot in there, because there's business readers, but there's a difference between a business reader and somebody who trades shares of the JSE. You'll find, even financial planning guys don't do a lot of advertising on something like MoneyWeb, because they believe that that's, it's almost overcrowded. There's too many people in a specific demographic. So yes, you can say to some degree that you can reach these people in a certain space, but you can't totally pigeonhole it. And I think that if, particularly when you're a small business and you're just starting out, a lot of it comes down to who you know and some of the social capital. And sometimes you're going to connect with people that you through completely unrelated channels, and then you kind of build it out from there. So yes, you could kind of make some kind of educated guesses, and I'll kind of go through some of the demographic tools that are there. But the reality is that you're probably going to be targeting more specific people rather than kind of mass marketing across a whole lot of channels. And I mean, even if you look at digital advertising for a moment, if you go and look at an AdWords campaign, you kind of considered successful if you're sitting with kind of a 3 or 4% click-through rate on your ads. And I mean, Google, Facebook, theoretically, they give you all of this data about how to target the right person, but actually 97% of it's wasted or semi-wasted, because just because your ad is in the right place doesn't mean you're actually going to catch the eye of the person there who will ultimately be a decision maker when it comes to your product. Make sense?
I think so, yeah. So the point is you're going to have to work at it and find out where they are.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of, again, we come back to that kind of phrase of business development needs marketing. You need to work out where your client really is once you've got somebody who's actually prepared to buy from you. And sometimes if you make the assumption that you're just going to find people in a certain place at a certain time, wearing a certain type of outfit, it may not necessarily be the right person. Yet you could do geo-targeting, for instance, if you've got a very geographically targeted product. But until you know that, a lot of it's going to be hit and miss. So I mean, Twitter is a kind of, I like Twitter. It's become a bit messy and it's a bit manufactured in a lot of places, but I quite like the platform in general. It's nice to be able to engage. I know Tyron's very active on there. Ken's active on there. Snapshot and SME.TAX do quite a lot on there. But what's quite nice is you can actually, they've got some nice measurement tools that are involved when it comes to Twitter. So I'm just going to quickly, there we go, that's our Twitter handle. Make sure you're following us. But I just want to use this as a good example. So there's a project we were involved in. So Stefano Morani is the CEO of a JSE listed business called Renogen. They're involved in helium on the helium extracts out at Virginia in the Free State. And one of the big challenges you have as a listed business in South Africa is you have hardly anybody who follows your business if you're outside of the top 40. So there are a lot of kind of smaller businesses that get no media coverage, get no exposure. But Anna and Just Tash is Nastasia Oren. So they actually were part of a campaign we did where we interviewed the CEOs of listed businesses. In this case, it was Steph Morani, and they were actually able to build quite a nice ongoing relationship with Steph around in this case, the particular project they're doing in the helium project. But it becomes an ongoing relationship. It's not just a case of throwing noise out there and saying, hey guys, have you heard of us? Look at us, we're shouting out at you. There's a lot of ongoing engagement. And I mean, this is now probably 3 weeks after the original discussion with Steph, and he's already, I mean, this was pulled today, Hopper's 11, he's still seeing a relationship that exists with Nastasia, with NA, to be able to engage them on social media. Again, visuals. I mean, I think that if you look at what works really well on Twitter is visuals. So, I mean, here's just a very simple example, but this is Nastasia doing a kind of call to action to go and visit her show that she's doing this evening on, it's a Facebook Live show that she runs, but you can go and see it. But you can see the difference between trying to throw a whole lot of words out there, something like that, versus if you've got an image that goes with it. So, you know, if you are going to go and do nice social media stuff, it is nice to be able to actually allocate some time, nice creative, and, you know, get some nice imagery that goes with it. You can get far higher engagement rates than if you want to be able, than if you try and just use text, you know, text focused ads or communication. But, you know, right up front, we said, you know, how much time do you waste on social media? So I don't know how often you guys look at this or if you even know it exists, but I mean, the Twitter's got a whole analytics function, and that analytics function will tell you kind of how effective your tweeting has been in the last couple of days, how many times your tweets have been viewed. You know, so there's a very good example. You know, there's the company Twitter account, 112,500 impressions over 28 days, and it has a 1.6% engagement rate. Or yeah, so yeah, 1.6% engagement rate and about 3,900 impressions per day. I can tell you now that of those 112,500 ad impressions, not one piece of it has, you know, not one part of that has turned into paying business. And I think that that kind of sums up the, you know, yes, we do some interesting things. Yes, there's a bit of engagement, but, you know, you have to do a lot of tweeting to get to 112,000 impressions in 28 days to get a whole 1.6% engagement rate. So again, you know, are you actually getting a return on investment for that, for your Twitter energy and time? So if you, I mean, you've got the option of obviously putting in Twitter ads so you can promote your messages and making it far more visual. But, you know, go and have a look at what's actually working, what people are actually engaging with. And that'll give you a good sense of whether you're actually wasting your time on social media and generating an actual return on the time and investment involved. This is quite an interesting thing. It's we do it for one of our partners, but people often forget, you know, this whole thing about if you go onto social media, how many, you know, the fact is everyone's trying to chase followers, so that you can have a whole lot of people following you on your platform, but then they forget that actually there's a whole engagement element that comes with it. So what we do for this particular client is every time that they get a new sign up to their platform or follower on Twitter, they get a welcome. Thanks. And we then do we send a custom message to them to say, hey, thanks very much for taking the time to connect with us on social media. And if you're interested in more information, you can go and get here's a link to an investment presentation for you. And we find that actually works really well. People are actually quite surprised when they can see that you've done some form of engagement and you're actually taking an interest in them. And I think people often chase followers, not necessarily they chase quantities of followers, not quality of followers. So I think that's quite a cool tool to be able to engage with. People don't take the time to follow you, and then for the sake that they're just going to be a passive listener, they expect they believe that you can add some value. So you should be mining that the whole time as you're going along. Any questions on Twitter? I mean, I'd love to hear your experiences. I mean, what works on Twitter, what doesn't work on Twitter? I mean, one of the things that we are finding, and I think you'll kind of see this as you kind of build up your social media profile as well. But you know, Tyron, Ken, myself, we've got the company accounts, and then our personal accounts. And one of the reasons that our programs seem to be starting to get some real traction is the fact that we can kind of play off each other's social media presence and be able to build up a higher level of engagement by sharing each other's messaging. And I think what you're going to find when you guys do start building up your Twitter profiles is, we're going to be there to be able to raise your profile, to be able to get it out there and say, hey, have you checked out Drone Eye Technologies, or have you checked out JP's project, whatever it is. We want to kind of keep the social discussion going so that we can kind of share the messaging and amplify the messaging for you as well. Questions? Okay, then I'm going to move on to Facebook. So Facebook is obviously I'm very undecided on Facebook, and I mean, you've probably seen quite a lot of the redesign that's come out at the moment. I don't know if it's just me, but I find it very slow, and I find the feeds very annoying. I think it's really struggling with a bit of an identity crisis at the moment. But there are some, some people find a lot of success. And you can go in, there's the shopping, the online e-commerce functionality, which is quite powerful. Often if you look at the people that are on Facebook, I mean, they kind of look at the demographic being 40, 50, 60 plus. You have got the kind of older, more mature audience that's going into there. But the geo-targeting, geolocation stuff is quite cool. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that I Know a Guy group, but it's a very good example of how if you can build up a bit of traction and a bit of awareness on it, you can do some very cool things. So if you aren't following the I Know a Guy group, basically what happens was it was started by a lady, and I've gone completely blank for her name, but it'll come to me in a moment. And she was effective. What people could do was they can post onto the group and they can say, I'm looking for somebody to do a pull-up banner for my company. And people then respond and say, I know a guy. And they will then go and post the links to it. And it's a great way to go and source business and find suppliers in your area and go and find leads for your business. So that's quite cool. This is just I pulled a bit of data from one of the pages that we've got there. But again, same story. How much time are you wasting on Facebook doing regular posting and not really getting any return on investment? This was 7 days. It had 1 page likes, 10 page views, 2 page previews, 83 post 41 post engagements, very low responsiveness rate, 58% there. It's not really justifying the investment in time. It is nice to have a presence, but if I look at the kind of more technical, more specific industries, I battle to see where Facebook fits in from a kind of marketing or social media perspective. I mean, you guys might have an alternative view. I'd be interested to know. I mean, have you guys, if from the guys on the group, I mean, have you actually seen success on using Facebook as a platform? Yes, no. Sam, I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you there?
Nick, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Nick.
Yeah, I think the Facebook has got some traction. Like what you're saying, the impact of Facebook groups and also generally the marketplace. What I've seen on social media is that a lot of companies have been putting an emphasis of buying Facebook ads, buying all these ads, but in actual effect, the organic growth gives you more quality leads, gives you more conversions than what you would normally do to say how many people are you reaching out, and based on all those statistics and all that. So from what I've seen, there is a huge potential for free marketing or free business development on Facebook. Join all these groups that are social groups that are available. Like you're saying, I Know a Guy is a very good group that you get somebody who is almost ready to buy, and it's all about now you getting to convert that into a sale or into a client. So I find that Facebook is good and organic reach. I mean, you can get so much from organic rather than paid ads.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing, So I mean, for those who don't kind of follow the kind of terminology, I mean, you've got organic growth, and then you've got paid for growth, or paid media, and effectively, the real value that comes out of it is when you're able to go and show that your own community is engaged. So the I Know Guy one, very good example. People engage with it the whole time, and they're constantly talking about sharing opportunities. The community generates a lot of the content that drive with it. But for a lot of people, they have to go and pay to get their brand in front of other people and making sure that it's more visual. I found very low success rates of running paid for campaigns on Facebook. But maybe I've got I can maybe counter that and say my mom ran a river rafting place out by Hartbeespoort Dam for probably 2 years. And I mean, she was able to take a business that was doing about 12,000 Rand a month in revenue, and she got up to about 100 grand a month just doing river rafting, and almost all of that came through her Facebook ads. But that was very much a leisure service, and that worked for her. So she kind of had a formula, and that just seemed to work. But for a lot of the business, more traditional businesses, I think you really have to kind of work and say, can I actually get some engagement? Can I get above the noise that a lot of people see on their social media platform? So, yeah, I mean, I think that organic and that kind of integrity of your groups is such an important element, and some people get it right and other people really do struggle with it.
Yeah, I think, Mark, for me, I find on Facebook, it's a lot of opinion based versus like an actual marketing platform for a business. Like if I'm looking for something, like if I'm looking at a restaurant, I'm going to go to Facebook and look for someone's opinion on the restaurant, not the actual if I go to their Facebook page, I'm looking at what people have commented about the food or the quality or whatnot, versus not really like what the business offers or what the restaurant offers.
Yeah, and I think that it really, some people do Facebook incredibly well. Other people just find it noisy and difficult to engage with. But I think one of the things that really does work well about it is kind of the geolocation thing of being able to find restaurants near to you, being able to find service providers close to you. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that if you're running a technical or a business advisory service, you'll find it, you might find it harder to get engagement. But I mean, they did say Donald Trump stole the previous US election because he was able to go and use social media and primarily Facebook to be able to kind of generate that following. So I mean, that's I think you different courses for different strokes, different folks, different horses, different courses. What is quite interesting though, and I mean, this is one of the nice tools to be able to go and use inside of the analytics, is you can go and see when your fans are online. So if you've got a company page or a group page, you can find out when your fans are actually online. You can see kind of during the day, they kind of, in this case, a lot of our group, this page group falls off quite drastically after 3 o'clock. So it tells you when you should be posting, whether your posts are getting any visual exposure, and being able to go and build that out. Top posts from pages you watch, and you'll see again when we look at LinkedIn as well. But it shows you what your audience are actually looking at. So if you're following a lot of business advisory, what's the kind of trending content on there? And I find that quite an interesting thing, so that you can go and engage with your audience appropriately. Post reach, this just sort of talks a little bit about how effectively your posts are going. And so this is that thing we're talking about, organic versus paid. You can go and boost a post on social media if you want to put some money behind it. This is just all organic growth and how many impressions it's got. But one of the good examples, so Outvest, for instance, they've got, I think, about 3,000 Facebook followers. But if they don't put any money behind their post, it does tend to disappear in the clutter and the noise quite quickly. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is cool, and there's some quite interesting things that happen on LinkedIn. But I think that there's a couple of things maybe before we actually get into LinkedIn. I mean, I think that for a lot of you, LinkedIn is probably going to be your starting point in terms of finding clients and engaging with clients. So I think that you obviously want to follow people that have your common interests. But you can also use there's a free LinkedIn version and there's a paid for LinkedIn version. So The paid for LinkedIn version allows you to go and do what they call in-mail, so you can basically send messages to specific people that you're not connected with. You can do a lot of you can kind of search organizations and identify who the kind of decision makers are inside those organizations. But for you, remember, you're thinking about this with a business development cap on. You want to be able to go to LinkedIn and say, I'm trying to find out who the decision maker is for. Let me use the example of this cannabis business that we work with at the moment. We kind of track keywords related to medical cannabis, and we're looking for anybody talking about that. So we search, we search for content, we search for people who are specifically interested in it, and we're constantly trying to engage them the whole time. If you've got, so this is just a quick company page that we grabbed from a social perspective, and these have got analytics attached to them to go and look at what the different, again, how your post is doing, and the kind of impressions, video views, how often it's been clicked, what the click-through rate is, reactions, comments, and shares. And what this is the kind of data you want to see, what is working, what's actually creating a discussion. And one of the things that I have an issue with in a lot of our LinkedIn posts is very low engagement rates. I mean, okay, these were just 2 random posts that I picked there, but if people are not clicking on your post, it doesn't really indicate that you've actually got the engagement. It's not sufficiently gripping, it's not sufficiently interesting to be able to go and engage them and kind of get some reactions out of them. Yo.
So as far as LinkedIn goes, is it for your own profile, or is it essential to have a company page as well?
So, I've always tried, particularly if you don't have an online, like a paid for, if you don't have a website, I think one of the easy wins has always been to go and establish a LinkedIn company page and drive people to that. It was actually how we started with the cannabis project. They didn't have an online, they didn't have a website presence. So for the first kind of 2 months, they just drove people to their LinkedIn company page. And it's quite nice. You can kind of, it looks like it's got a pretty standardized template. You can go and put things in geographic location. You can go and your staff can go and kind of put themselves into there. And you can invite people to go and engage with the content without having to go and invest in a full website that is there. So, for me, it's a nice starting point for online presence.
Okay, thanks.
One of these cool features, and this is a relatively new one, up until kind of start of the month, you couldn't actually see who was following your pages. So if you've got a company page, you could always see that there were 450 people following it, but you could never see who those people were. And now what you could do is you can go and say, if you click onto the analytics page, you can go and click followers, and it tells you who your latest followers are. And you can use that information to be able to go and start engaging with them. I can see when my staff are not following the company page. And so that's it's a very good indicator for me. But also just to see which clients are coming through. There's somebody from PSG Wealth. There's a CEO of No Limits Travel and Tours, CEO of the Sphere Hemisphere. But it already means that you've got some sense of who they are, why they're following you, and you can immediately strike up a conversation. So this Chrisley Buerta, she was a financial planner for PSG. I noticed what happened was we actually shared some of her content. She'd done a very nice little video, and we shared it on the company page. And then I noticed that she kind of followed us on LinkedIn, and then kind of out of the blue, she messaged me last night to say, hey, is there somewhere that we can chat about some form of collaboration? So I think this is like a very cool tool to actually see who's interested in your product or service, and you can invite to and engage people from that perspective. So I really like that new addition. Same as we said on Facebook, you can go and look on LinkedIn and see what the people on your pages or your fans or people who are following your page are actually interested in, and to see what type of content. So you can see by I can see what my employees are reading. I can see what my page followers are reading. I can see what all LinkedIn members are, and I can go and I can sort by different types of content or information. You obviously need a little bit of a decent sized data sample to be able to do that, but it's quite nice because it shows you what type of content you can then go and share on your page, because you'll be able to see what is relevant to your audience. So if you are finding it hard to populate your page, then make an effort to go and try and find out what type of content your followers are reading, and then go and kind of put your content in that, to align your content to go and match that. So I thought that was cool. This also works really, really well. So this is one of our clients, so Zella, so they're very involved with kind of grants and incentives for the DTRC. And what they're looking for is people involved in manufacturing or renewable energy. So what we do for them, we share an article. In this case, it was about the manufacturing sector. It was on MoneyWeb this morning. And we actually tag the people who were quoted in the article. So in this case, it was Philip Rodseth and Patrick Sala and Odada, and we go and tag them. They immediately get a message that Uzenzela has tagged them in a post, and they obviously are curious to see, one, who Uzenzela are, two, what are they tweeting, what are they tweeting or posting about, and that's a really nice way to start an engagement element for it. We find it actually does really nicely to go and drive up the follower number of the right type of followers on your page. So if you're ever looking for easy wins, this is one of the first things we always recommend for clients, is go and find articles that mention people you want to do business with, post it, put the links, and do it. And you don't even need to be following them to be able to tag them in your posts. So that's quite cool. Some kind of do's and don'ts on LinkedIn. So I think there's nothing worse than when you connect with somebody, and as soon as you connect with them, you immediately get a message to say, like up in the top left hand corner, "Hello, Mark Ashton, how are you doing?" Well, I'm fine, but I have no idea who Stephen Stafford is, and I think he's a bit of a dud account. But he immediately posts, that's the kind of personal message that comes through, and I don't know who this person is, and it immediately puts me off engaging with them. What's even worse is I had this one, and it says, "Good morning," and I say, "Hi, Gijs, how can I help you?" And then he responds and says, "I'm not sure." I really don't understand the purpose of that kind of messaging. And it's this happens to be a real world example, but it's that type of thing that we can't, it doesn't let you engage, and it's not a very genuine type of use of a professional platform. So I mean, LinkedIn is great. You can connect with anybody you want, and if they accept it, you can then go and message them. But try and if you've got a reason, you have one opportunity to pitch to them, make sure you've actually got something valuable to share. Another example was like Estefania Brass. Great to connect with you. I'm Estefania. I recruit people to travel and increase their financial portfolio. Do you keep your incomes options opened? Reality is, this is somebody who's trying to sell me a Forex solution, and I'm kind of over being pitched Forex or Bitcoin or any of these kind of things on it. And I think that people get very frustrated when the first thing you get out of them is to go and say, what can I sell you? What can I shove down your throat? What does work quite nicely is, and this is one of the things we do quite well, I think, is if you go and find trending posts about a particular topic, you can go and tag your company in the comments section. So look for posts where this was just a very quick example, but had already had 4 people that liked it. There were 3 comments on it, and we tagged the company thing underneath it, and we immediately picked up 2 or 3 new followers from it. Again, find topics that are relevant. So the cannabis thing, for instance, we look for a lot of the cannabis related posts, and they've got quite an actively engaged audience. We don't know the international audience particularly well, so we have to work quite hard to find out what's topical and what's relevant. But if I tag the cannabis business in it, it often picks up new followers. So I quite like that element of LinkedIn. questions on LinkedIn before we jump to Insta? Nope. Cool. So Insta is the one, and I'm going to have to defer to the people. My staff call me old, so I have to I'll defer to the two under 30s that are on the call to be able to tell me how to make Instagram work if in doubt. But I do have a couple of comments around it. Again, Instagram is a very visual brand, so it works very well for things like food brands. It works very well for health brands. But it doesn't have, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to populate and come up with inspirational quotes on Insta and trying to position themselves as thought leaders, etc. But for me, I've battled to see how it does unless you can go and share some really interesting content. So, I mean, one of the things people who does it quite well, I think, is somebody like Landalozi, and I think it's Leopard's Lodge or Leopard's Hill Lodge or whatever they're called. They actually go and take a drone flight in the morning, and they fly over the typical route that a game ranger would take. Obviously, we've got lockdown at the moment, and they actually take people on a virtual tour or virtual game drive in the morning. Now, to me, that's a very cool way to go and put some content together and share it. I think they do it on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and then they share snippets onto Instagram. But for me, that's quite a cool, quite a nice way, a nice visual way to get people to see how your technology is working, or to go and give a visual element to it. But for a lot of, I struggle with it as a business platform, but I'm happy to take feedback and see what does or what doesn't work. This, I think this is the problem that we have with Instagram at the moment, is everybody wants to try and be as out there as possible. On the left is kind of one of these Instagram influencers talking about Bitcoin and how they got rich, and very visual. And on the right-hand side is somebody with a very generous personality who is trying to put themselves out there to go and talk a little bit about health and fitness. And I think that the kind of integrity of the messaging might be debatable. And I think that for a lot of you guys, the idea would be to try and use Instagram. If you've got something visual to share and you can do it in a nice way, by all means. But don't spend a lot of time on it if you're not going to find it driving business decisions and business and social related, and turning that social interaction into actual business. Sam, I don't know if you've got any other kind of thoughts on Insta before I move. I mean, what works, doesn't work.
I think for me, Mark, it's definitely like the age of Instagram. Like, I know like my mom has Instagram, but she definitely doesn't use it. And I think like the age of Instagram is literally the age between 14 and 25 are like constant users. So if that's the kind of reach with your business, there's definitely marketing that can happen. But if it's like, there is obviously people over the age of 25 that have Instagram, but they're not as
Sam, I think we lost you. Yeah, there we go. You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, so I was just saying, I think that the 25-year-olds and the, even up to 30 are a lot busier on Instagram. So if that's your market, then you'll reach them on Instagram. But if your market's for older people or older demographics, then that's where you might fall short.
Yeah. And I think that there's a time and a time and a cost element to trying to put together fancy kind of video content and that kind of thing. So, one of the brands that I do know does it quite well is there's a bunch called Fire It Up. They run a motorcycle. They sell motorcycles, and so they often post each new motorcycle that they've got up for sale. And they've got a very active social media presence that they're able to work with. If you're going to look at what I think they do it quite well. They did a launch over the weekend. It's very professional. It looks very slick. Nice photography that goes with it. But, I think again, kind of coming back to the initial message is it doesn't help to go and spend a whole lot of time on social media if it's not actually translating into, translating into actual business. And, one of the things that we often see is people trying to chase likes and shares and all of that, but likes don't pay the bills. And I think that is one of these kind of messages that we've seen repeatedly is, just because somebody likes your content, and again, I come to the lady with in the bikini, is it's all good and well to share your, to put yourself out there and do things that people are naturally going to say, that's cool, I really like that. But if they're just liking it for the sake of liking it, it doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to convert them into business. So, stick to what you know, stick to what works. So kind of my thoughts on social media, I was kind of aiming to do this around an hour, and then we would get through any other kind of questions and answers. First thing is newsletters are your friend. We often forget that newsletters are probably one of the most powerful tools that you can ever kind of have in your marketing arsenal, and it costs you next to nothing to go and do a nice newsletter all the time. The thing about a newsletter, so you'd obviously use something like MailChimp, but a newsletter is a way of communicating with your clients on a regular basis and sharing some very valuable, sharing your content and insights with them. And, for all the time and effort that goes into things like Instagram posts, that goes into Facebook pages, etc., a newsletter probably, kind of a decent newsletter has about a 30% open rate. And that means 1 out of 3 people are effectively looking at your newsletter and saying, I've opted in, I want to look at this information. You share something valuable with me, I'll go and work on it. So newsletter is super, super important. Don't waste too much time on social media. I mean, the reality is that you guys are running small businesses. You don't have whole teams behind you that can get out there and kind of and spend hours trying to create fancy content. Your job is to sell stuff, and so don't waste too much time on it. Be professional. The internet never forgets. I think we've all seen the South Africa story. The moment you kind of stick your head too high, somebody will go back and see what you tweeted when you were 14 years old or 16 years old or whatever it was, and it can be held against you. So be professional. The internet does not forget, and people will find these things. A screen grab is very easy to put. Is very easy to store. It's very easy to manipulate, and it's very hard to kind of manage social media once it gets when the tide turns against you. Dedicate time to building your network and following specific topics or links. One of the things that I try and make a big effort to do is to go and say to to go and find people that I specifically want to follow the whole time, and growing my social media every couple of days. If there is somebody on Twitter or LinkedIn, I make a big effort to go and find new people to follow, and I try and follow people with diverse interests who will be able to connect me with other people. Sometimes one of the fun activities that we do sometimes look at doing with clients is to try and work out how you can get into an organization. So if your kind of goal, for instance, is to break into Tiger Brands, and you know that the person responsible for managing the procurement at Tiger Brands is a guy by the name of Ken Brown, you would then go and draw a spider diagram to say, who do you know on LinkedIn that would be able to connect you with the next person inside of Tiger Brands, who'd be able to ultimately go and connect you with Ken Brown, who is going to be the person who's going to make the buying decision for your product or service. And because you'd come as via referral, there's a very nice way of being able to go and see what they're interested in, what type of content they engage in, and you'll be able to say, I can actually start a discussion with this person. Be consistent. I think that often people, when the phones aren't ringing and everything else is happening, you've got more time to go and kind of do social media. People like the consistency. They like the consistency of a template. They like the consistency of the type of content you post, and they like the consistency of knowing almost when to expect your content. So, I think consistency is a very, very important element to it. Focus on providing evidence of success. Show people actually using your product. It sounds kind of obvious, But, you know, one of the most powerful tools that we had with the medical technology business, for instance, it had no customers to start off with. We actually put it in the hands of a couple of potential clients. And again, I come back to that lock-in culture example we used right up front. You know, we didn't have a lot of money to spend on branding or on marketing. So, you know, when I was able to go and show that David, who's a biokineticist for the Virgin Active, was using our medical technology product, it immediately affirms to people that there is a level of engagement, a level of trust. You know, one of the very simple wins that you can often do is just is donate your product or service, or get an endorsement from somebody who is using your product, and suddenly you can pick up a lot of support doing that. And then last thing, it's called social media for a reason. You know, we often go onto social media and we sit there posting about how awesome we are, how awesome our products and services are. But the reality is that it's actually got to be a two-way discussion. You need to be able to engage in conversations, you need to be able to draw on your network, and you need to be able to go and turn it into a social discussion that you can actually have a discussion rather than just a shouting out there and saying, hey, look at me. Those are my kind of thoughts on social media. I'd love to kind of field some specific questions, and I'm happy to go and look at some case studies or kind of discuss what works or what hasn't worked for you. And then we can kind of wrap up after that. So opening the floor, hit me with some questions, please.
What if...
Okay,
sorry, please go for it, Sam.
Mark, I don't know if this is a question or just like an opinion, but I think like you were speaking, am I on mute? No.
No, good.
You were speaking about consistency, and I was just thinking like consistency, and when I'm on social media, I find that like the first time I see an advert, I just skip through it, but like the more often it comes up onto my feed, like it slowly sort of like intrigues me, and then only eventually, like by the fourth time I've seen it, then do I only actually click on it and go, what is this? Like it must be quite good if it keeps coming up on my feed.
So, I mean, I think there are two parts to that. I mean, you know, they often say, depending on who you follow, but I mean, different marketing people will tell you that you need to kind of touch people 6 or 7 times before they actually recognize that you're doing something of interest. From a brand perspective, but the best kind of marketing is often that which is done, which doesn't come across as overt marketing. So sometimes the example, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example that we've done. Maybe think about something that we've worked with. You know, okay, something like let's use QuickWill as an example. Now, QuickWill is a legal tech firm in South Africa. They've just started out, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get financial advisors to use their their will service for their clients to be able to go and to write up their wills, draw up the wills, etc. But it's the same story. Nobody's prepared to jump until they see somebody else doing it. And what they did was they gave the will, this will product to five financial planners, and they said, hey, look, Terence Tobin is now, or Terence or whoever it was, is now using our product, and Terence does a quick podcast or vodcast and says, look at us, it's now really, I really like this product. And that immediately gives this kind of evidence of success that the technology is working and it's got a real client base. So, I mean, always when you don't have any clients out there, it's very difficult to get that first person to be able to kind of jump with that snapshot. In fact, would be a very good example of one of the things where we've seen where kind of recognition of other people buying into it. So, I mean, Snapshot, nice piece of technology that's out there, but we did a post and said, hey, suddenly the user base has jumped to 10,000 users, and suddenly like people's ears perk up, like what technology in South Africa now has 10,000 followers or 10,000 users, and it creates a sense of being successful and power. The tool is being adopted. So I think that's one. Those are a couple of considerations there. JP, you had a question?
There we go. Sorry, just that mute button that needed to be switched off. I think what I want to ask is, I think it's, do you have any suggestions or strategies on how one can come up with a content strategy in terms of having that compelling, honest content, and that you actually work with a plan and not just post whatever comes up in your mind, and that it also speaks back to your core principles, your value proposition, your products and services, and that when someone reads it, that they really get a grip or a glimpse into who you are as an organization. Is there any practical advice you can give around that?
Yes and no. So I mean, like, obviously there's so I think that a lot of small businesses get very kind of hung up on the type of culture that they're trying to put out there or portray that's out there. And they get very obsessed with the messaging side of things. So I mean, the first, and again, we always repeat this thing is, what is it that actually brings the clients? If I post that I'm, let's use York's. I mean, they're doing some very nice stuff with their zebra crossing lodge at the moment. But when celebrities are coming through to the lodge and they're going and posting that people are there, it creates a sense of endorsement, a sense of the support. People actually believe that this is a 4 or 5, I think it's a 4-star resort, and I think that adds a lot of credibility to it. But to go and create content the whole time is very, very time consuming. And people get very obsessed with kind of content plans rather than trying to do actively trying to create business opportunities. People rather, you're going to find far higher engagement when you're able to show somebody's actually using your product than trying to convince everybody that you've got a product that they should be looking at. So my thing would be, you get far greater value out of getting 4 or 5 clients that are actually endorsing it and sharing it across their network than trying to, kind of start from scratch and trying to come up with the kind of gripping, hard-hitting content that people are going to follow. Keep it very simple. Find something that people respond to and gradually build it out. But again, that blockchain culture example was play off other people's networks for as long as possible rather than and kind of collaborate, which is what we found with the snapshot, the SME.TAX accounts. Rather go and use other people's platforms to try and amplify your messaging rather than trying to kind of build the thing from scratch. You just don't have the time, and you don't have the audience, and you spend this time chasing likes and impressions rather than necessarily chasing the work that's going to put the money in the bank.
All right, thank you.
Mark, if I can just pop in here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the guys have to realize that sales and marketing is a 6-week cycle. So posting a tweet every random sort of week is not gonna work. Have a plan and let them do it. It's 6 weeks. So exactly that type of thing. So guys, take the knowledge Mark shared here. Follow the rest of you guys. If you guys are not on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm sure Dumasani can assist with helping you guys, teaching you how to sign up, what to do, and then follow each other. Get into an ecosystem. That's what we're building. This is an ecosystem. And if you guys are posting about your product, we're going to be obviously pushing that product as well and letting people know who you are, that you're on this program and things like that. So this is where it starts. Test it out, and we actually go from here. Okay, and it's as I said again, just remind, 6-week cycle. So doing it ad hoc is not going to give you what you want. Keep at it. If it's an hour a day, it's like anything else. Just keep at it every day, do something, and actually go from there.
And I think that word ecosystem is super important, because we all think that social media is about kind of shouting and trying to get above everybody else's noise. The best stuff, and again, I come all the way back to this example that I used with Anna and Steph and that kind of thing. I mean, 4 weeks ago, and I knew nothing about helium in the Free State. Now she's got, the CEO of one of these businesses actively seeking her out to be able to amplify the message. They've tagged the company account, they've tagged Nastasia, they've tagged NA in these things. And, it is an ecosystem. It's where you all kind of lift each other up rather than sit in a situation where you are trying to, where you're trying to make as much noise as possible and doing it as outrageous a thing as possible to be able to generate social media following. Rather try and work out how you can collaborate with other people's things. Tash Aronson is very good at sharing and amplifying other people's messages. Doing a little bit of social good and like celebrating other people's successes is one of the things that's going to generate followers. People want good news stories at the moment. They don't want to sit there and hear from, hey, I'm pushing my latest product at with a 10 Rand discount or whatever it is. They want to hear about what it is that you're doing to be able to celebrate successes inside the industry and celebrating inside your network. And I think those are the messages that get amplified from that perspective. Other questions? I'm furiously seeing who's following me on. Well done, Raquel. I see you on. I can see you. You've taken the lesson to heart there. Yeah, any other questions, thoughts, comments? It was inspirational. I'm impressed. Ty, when's the next? Oh, is there a question?
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to jump in with another thing. A lot of times social media is also just about marketing, and marketing is just getting the message out there. It's not necessarily a sale. So it's, being aware. So when somebody does come across you at another platform, they go, hey, I know this brand. I've seen it somewhere. And that helps a lot in terms of, making you aware, making people aware that you're part of a wider audience. So yeah, it's actually quite good. The guys must just get on as many platforms. I mean, we don't use Facebook at all. I've never been on Facebook personally. I don't know if that says something bad about me, but yeah, it's not a platform I've liked, but I believe a lot of other people get great success out of it. So social media is just to be out there, let the guys see it, and eventually the sale comes through and I saw your brand, and then they can talk to you about it.
And like, there's so much information when you look at these social platforms. I mean, I just use the example of this kind of post that we in the bottom right hand corner here. I mean, you can see the people who engage with your post, who likes it the most, who regularly finds what you post interesting. There's, go and connect with that person. If you see somebody is particularly interested in a topic, so this in this case was related to the something the German Chamber of Commerce had posted. Like, go and say, okay, well, here's my foot in the door. This is somebody who's obviously finds this content to be particularly engaging, particularly appealing. Let me go and follow this person and start a discussion with it. We in South Africa, we're so good at throwing everything onto social media and saying, look at us. But like, when you think about it, this is actually like walking into a meeting room and actually building a relationship with somebody. And you'll be surprised. I mean, I've often been to these social media conferences, and the people who are the noisiest on social media are often the quietest when you meet them face to face. So, I mean, the intent is to say, let's actually get out there and see this as actual networking rather than just a case of seeing how many followers or likes that I can garner for a particular topic. And maybe just one thing on consistency, and maybe it also partially answers JP's question. If you look at the way that SME.TAX does their content, I actually think for a lot of it, you've probably got, what, 8 or 9 posts that you've got there, Tyron, that you kind of just cycle through? Ken, Tyron, I don't know whoever's managing it.
Ken would know that.
Yeah.
I think it's a few more, Mark. You must catch up. I think I'm on about 15 to 20 that we regurgitate.
Yeah. So I apologize. It was 15 to 20. But the, I mean,
I
the
saw on
reality-
Dilly's hands, the hand was up.
Andile, you got a question?
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. I've never been a fan of social media.
Yep.
But now I'm seeing that it's one of the ways you can use to actually advertise your business.
Yeah.
But now, among the social media platforms that you spoke about, which one do you actually recommend? Because when you go through, especially Twitter, Facebook, you find out that most people are just there because they don't have anything to do. They're waiting for people to post, and then they just take a left turn. They actually comment on something very bad, and I think that is one of the things that actually demotivated me in terms of this social media. But when I look at the LinkedIn, it's still the one that is more professionally among the others.
So, I mean, like, if I look at the work that you are kind of heading into and potentially interested in, I mean, there's so many interesting things that you could be doing. And I was actually thinking of you the other day. So one of the clients that we're doing some work with runs a mining operation in the Northern Cape. And he says so they've got two problems at the moment. The first problem is they've got huge security issues, and that they've spent a lot of money on security at the moment. So they're talking about the role that drones could play in security around the mining operations. And the second one is around kind of looking at the solar energy panels, and using drones to go and have a look at how these panels, what's been damaged, what could work, couldn't work. If you're thinking about the business opportunities for what you're involved in, I mentioned Londolozi or the game ranging thing, but I mean those are the kind of things that you could be sharing. So you don't need to sit there sharing pretty girls on the girls of Facebook, but you can kind of share a lot of very interesting content in respect of of how people are using drones. And I would kind of be putting all my energy into following people that are doing interesting drone related work so that you can kind of start learning and seeing what opportunities are coming up from them. I think, I shared with you right up front, if I remember correctly, there was that CEDA program where they were sharing all the drone type, the drone program, that drone support program. And the only reason I knew about it was because I happened to follow CEDA on LinkedIn. So I mean, there's the type of content, but if you kind of sitting there searching for people in South Africa who are posting about drone-related technology, you would know who the movers and shakers in a particular circle are, and then you do shut out the noise of everybody else, kind of making a scene and trying to build up content, because they've got nothing better to do with their time.
No, thank you very much for that insightful comment. Yeah, I will try to shift my mindset because that has been really demotivating me. But no, I will look at it in that way. Follow the people that we share the same sentiments, and we'll take it from there. No, thank you very much for actually looking at this social media platform because it's a huge platform which can be beneficial if you're using it properly, and which can really work bad if you're not using it properly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Yeah, maybe as a comment to that, I think it's very true. Social media is like very toxic. So what I've seen and what probably has worked for me is I've tried to separate my personal accounts from what the business is in such a way that it goes to the extent that the brand stands on its own with its own pages, with its own content, separate from me as an individual. That way it protects me and my family from whatever it is that is negative that is going to come out of there. And it kind of filters all the noise from whoever it is that just wants to post a nasty comment. And
Yep.
I think once you explore the social media, once you explore things like Facebook or Twitter, and you learn things like blog or a report and all that, those items work because it filters everything. Then my question is to say, we've seen that social media is also being used like in reaction to the first, I think, question about the reviews, to say social media is being used as a platform to air out whatever grievances clients have, and sometimes clients are not being reasonable or are not being fair as to giving the whole picture of that. But in terms of your reviews, either on Google or on Facebook, it definitely gets you lower reviews. How do you filter those reviews and review all that so that you ensure that your ratings is not going to go to 2% because of maybe a few people who had not missed the point?
So, I mean, maybe a good example there is something like Zalzi. I mean, Zalzi obviously grew faster than, so they're the grocery delivery guys. And I mean, they grew faster than they were, faster than they actually were able to accommodate. And so, there were a lot of complaints about the quality of their service and, the people getting their orders wrong, etc. The thing is, if you put it out there, you are going to be in a situation where you are going to be kind of victim of whatever people rate your service as. And I mean, sometimes it can be a very harrowing experience. But by the same token, you can also get some very good reviews. And this is where you guys can also add a lot of value to each other's, to both your professional and your company profiles, is to be able to go and say, hey, I recognize that so-and-so has a particular skill. So if you look at LinkedIn, for instance, you can endorse people in a particular skill. So I'm just going to see if I can quickly pull up an example while I'm talking. But you can actually say that this is somebody who specializes in a particular field, and go and build out and recognize it. So you should go and celebrate what your colleagues do or what people about you do. Let me just find an example here. So if I do this, I should be able to share the screen. That should be sharing my LinkedIn screen at the moment. So that's the skills and endorsements. So you can see when people endorse me on a particular topic, and I mean, you can do the same thing with the company as well. So I'm endorsed by Mike Schussler, who's an economist, Reiku is a journalist, and I mean, I can get recommendations. So York left me a nice recommendation here. Christian, who's the CEO of Just One Lap, gave me a nice endorsement. So try and support each other as well. If you work with each other, try and support each other by kind of endorsing and saying, giving some credibility to what the others are, to what they do. Any other questions? Awesome. Okay, so now it's time for a little bit of homework. I know you guys have all been liaising with Dumasani around social media and that kind of thing. We've made a commitment to kind of raise your profiles on it, but I need you to take responsibility. Kind of pick your social platform that you want to work with. Get them to Dumasani, and then we will start actually trying to promote you, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter. I want us to start looking at this program and saying, hey, let's start encouraging people to look and follow your business. I mean, Tyron will be quite happy to push it. Ken, we've got all of these businesses that we've got, all the relationships that we have. We are quite happy to go and do it and start promoting you, but you've got to give us a point to go and aim at. You need to show us where your businesses are, what tags we need to follow, and you need to tag us, and we'll, obviously reciprocate to be able to drive awareness of it. But we need you guys to kind of actively start using the social platforms and trying to get across the messaging. And I mean, the big thing is you can't get it wrong at the moment. I mean, you kind of all starting out very early. Just get a bit of messaging going. I mean, the first, I always use the example, the first magazine that I ever edited, I put a typo on the front page of on the front cover. And I still managed to go and edit magazines for the next 3 years. Don't worry too much about getting it wrong. Just try and give us something to go and work with. so that we can give constructive feedback. It's very difficult to work when you don't know exactly what people are doing, but make an effort to kind of tag what you're doing, and we will then try and find ways to amplify that messaging. Happy, Tyrone?
Yeah, Mark, I think you've nailed it. Thanks. I think everyone can see the importance of social media. You know, there's a old saying in marketing and advertising, not having an advertising present is like, you know, flirting with someone or hanking at someone in the dark. You obviously know what you're doing, but nobody else does. So, yeah, guys, get out there and decide where you want to go with your brand, and we can help. That's what we're here for. Okay.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, that's me in a nutshell. Obviously, you can drop us a line. We're quite happy to engage, and we will see you at the next session. Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Guys, thanks a lot for the session. In the course of the next couple of days, Jean-Pierre will be getting hold of you guys regarding Rubik's and your information to log in. So just check out your emails, and then also Dumasani and Ken will be getting hold of you guys regarding your accounting platforms, things like HubDoc and things like that, to assist you on that. So just keep your eye out on the emails, and then we see where it goes from there. Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.